fucking me right now? I literally think I just recorded the whole podcast episode with my eyelash looking absolutely ill. Like, fucked up. I'm gonna put this in the beginning so everybody knows that if you see my eye looking a little fucking weird, it's because I just recorded a whole podcast episode with a janky fucking eyelash. Wow, love that for me. Hi guys, and welcome to a whole year of Midday Matcha with Livy. Clearly, I am fucking Livy. You heard it, you know it. It is the 1 year episode, and I could not be any more excited for this one. I absolutely cannot believe that it's been 1 year of Midday Matcha. I look back as to where I was a year ago. I was brunette, I had an eating disorder, and I had such toxic people in my life, and I absolutely had no idea, to now a whole year later is absolutely insane. But don't worry, we're gonna get into the past, the present, and the future of Midday Matcha in this episode, and I am so excited to really dive in deep with you guys, because if there's one thing I've realized, it's that I haven't really told you how Midday Matcha came to be. If you can hear my air, I'm so sorry. Turn the fuck off. Stop. Okay, chill. Anyways, I'm excited for this episode. I'm happy about this episode. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while just because it's a year. Like, I can't believe it's been a whole year of Midday Matcha. Like I told you, I wanted 50 episodes out. We put 51 episodes out, ladies and gentlemen. So I am pretty fucking happy about that. I am going to get into my week intro. I really don't know. You know what? Fuck a week intro. We're gonna go straight into the podcast. Okay, the start of Midday Matcha. Let's just say in early September of 2019, the idea of a podcast really fascinated me. So this was also the peak of the Call Her Daddy era, and a lot of people asked me if I was inspired by like Call Her Daddy to start a podcast, and I was, but I wasn't. I only listened to Call Her Daddy in the beginning, and I was really loved the idea of the podcast, and I really loved their dynamic, and I was like, oh my god, I can do this with my friends. So I had a plan to start it with an old friend, like such a strong plan. I had notebooks full of topics, ideas, and the structure of how the podcast would go. 2 months went by, I yeeted that friend the fuck out of my life, but I still really wanted to do a podcast, and I had all these topic ideas and everything, so I was like, maybe I can find another friend to do it with, and I was really stuck on the idea of having a co-host for a podcast, and it was always something I really wanted to do because I was like, oh my god, I would be really good at this because I'm just so conceited. I was like, of course I would be absolutely amazing at this. No, but I was like, I really love the idea of a podcast. I love how I can write it, I can structure it, I can edit it, I can do all these things, right? I genuinely had never heard of a solo podcast host until January of 2020. And an influencer I liked started a podcast by herself, and that's when I got the idea of Midday Matcha. Like, that's when it hit me like, oh no, Livy, you can do this podcast alone. Like, you don't need a co-host. And there's actually, like, the more I've deep dove into podcasts, there's so many podcasts that don't have co-hosts. So I'm like, oh, okay, like, but it never dawned upon me to start a podcast by myself. Also, like, you have to have some fucking balls to do a podcast by yourself at 21 years old. Like, you have to, no, I was 20. You have to have some balls to be 20 years old and be like, I'm gonna start a podcast and I'm gonna make it really successful. Like, I was like, damn, I had some actual balls on me to be like, you know what, I'm going to do this. But I wanted to do it so badly, and then I would always be like, oh no, but like, I'm writing, directing, producing shows, like, I'm not gonna do a podcast, like, I don't have the time. And then fast forward to the pandemic. March of 2020, everybody lost something in the pandemic, like I say, but I lost like the one creative outlet I had, and that was being on stage. So I was like, okay, this is the time to start the podcast because I'm not on stage anymore. I'm not doing what I love anymore. So let's try and find a different way. Literally, I could fucking kill my air. Anyways, let's find a different way for me to like get my creative outlet and do everything that I've been wanting to do. And do this podcast and just really fucking like just full send it, like do the goddamn podcast. Anyways, okay, the prep of making Midday Matcha looked like I had to find a name. So me finding a name was very difficult. This podcast was gonna be named 20 something, and then my dumbass had no idea that other people could probably have a podcast with that name. Looked it up, and I was like, oh, nope, there's a million podcasts called 20 something. And then I was like, well, what on earth would I want this to be? And then I had to get my cousin. She's an artist, and she did my artwork. If you guys wanna check out her artwork, you can go on my Instagram page. I'll tag her in the artwork again. But she did the artwork for this podcast, which has also been like one of my #1 questions, is like, who's done the artwork, which was great. She was, I love the cover of Midday Matcha. It's everything I am. It is who I am. I gave her a picture of like what I wanted her to base it off of, so she knew. And so I was like, this is the vibe I want for the podcast, and she really helped me with that. And then the name came about because this is like so fucking random. I used to work like 8-hour days while going to school and stuff, and like I'd be up at like 4 in the morning. So by noon, I'm absolutely exhausted. And every day in the middle of Mondays, especially, I would get a midday matcha. I would go get my little matcha drink, and I would live it up. And I would be like, okay, this is my midday matcha. And I'd always post it to my Instagram story and be like, drinking my midday matcha. So I was like, okay, this only feels right that I take the name Midday Matcha. Like, it's something cute, it's something fun, and I was like, I really like that. So that's how Midday Matcha came to be, with the name and everything. Then you have to get the equipment for the podcast, and then I have to find out what I want the podcast to be about, because a lot of you probably think I just come on here and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna say whatever I want to say today, and it's like, no, that wouldn't be great. I had a structure of what I knew I wanted the podcast to look like, and of how I was gonna write my episodes and how I did write my episodes. I definitely have like turned away from the structure. I keep the same structure I've had, but I definitely turn away from, like, if you listen to the first episode, The Men I've Dated, like, it was so specific, the structure. Now I'm a little bit more lenient with how I do my structure, but yes, I was like, okay, what do I want the podcast to be about? And I was like, you know what? I want everybody who's gonna be in their 20s or who's currently in their 20s not to feel so fucking alone, because it is such a lonely time. We have no idea what we're doing half the time. And from 16 to 20, I feel like I've had some pretty life-changing events. You're like, yeah, Livy, you got fucking raped. It is probably life-changing. It really is. But I was like, I want to share everything that I've been through with people. And when I started Midday Matcha, if you had told me that I would be talking about my rape and everything else, and like my eating disorder and being sexually assaulted again, I would have been like, oh my god, there's absolutely no way I'm gonna talk about those things. But those have been my favorite episodes, so I'm glad I've talked about those things. There's a certain comfortability when I come on here and talk to everybody. Like, I see the numbers, I know how many people listen. It's just like kind of scary, where it's like thousands upon thousands of people are hearing what I'm saying, but in my head, I'm like, oh, like, it just feels as if I'm talking to, like, I'm just like talking to my best friends. I'm like, oh, it's just so easy. Which is like one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna look back on this and be like, what the fuck, Vivi? But I love every minute of it now. So after I figured out I wanted what the podcast to be about, I decided the submission process of like getting on Apple, Spotify. I truly don't know how I got on all streaming platforms. Absolutely no idea. I Googled Midday Matcha one day and it was everywhere. I got on Amazon because they reached out to me and they were like, do you want to be on Amazon Music? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I absolutely have no idea how I got on Audible. I just got there. Absolutely no clue. Someone must have done it. And yeah. Then, which I'm like super grateful for. I'm not like, oh, absolutely no idea. Like, no, do you know how fucking cool it is that I can look up my own podcast on Amazon? Like, that's nuts. It's weird. It's crazy to me. If you had told me Midday Matcha would have been on Amazon a year ago, I would have been like, what? Like, why? I would have been like, what am I selling? No, but like, why? Like, it's just, everything is so crazy to me, and it makes me so emotional because in a weird way, I'm just like, not even a weird way, but it's like, god damn, bitch, like, you did that. Like, you did that shit. But enough of me hyping myself up. I planned a schedule for Midday Matcha. I am such a psychopath. Like, I think everyone's like, hi, like, you're crazy. Like, no, I'm fully fucking nuts. I knew if I was gonna do a podcast, it was going to be successful and it was going to be consistent. Consistency is key. Like, that is the number one thing. If I was gonna do a podcast, I was gonna do it weekly. So I was like, okay, weekly episodes. I know there's 52 weeks in a year. I'm gonna put out 50, which means 2 weeks off a year. And I was like, I'll probably use that on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Like I told you guys in the past episode, not sure what the fuck happened with the math, but something's definitely off because I hit 51 episodes. But my biggest advice, if you're starting a podcast or anything like that, is like consistency is key. Like, you don't take any weeks off. Actually take 2 weeks off, but knowing in the beginning of the year that I was like, I am not going to take any time off. I'm gonna dedicate my whole heart and soul into this and not skip a week no matter how busy I am, made it more legit, not only to me, but to everybody else as well. Also, figuring out how to edit a podcast. I was like, what the fuck is this? I had to figure out so much shit. And then what platform I wanted to put it on. There's like a million streaming platforms for podcasts we put on, but I was like, you know what? I just did the easiest one. I was like, this one seems the easiest. So I always saw people start a podcast but not take it seriously, and I was like, that's not going to do, like, I'm not gonna do that. Like I told you guys, I'm psycho. I don't half-ass anything. I am going to give it my all. So that leads us to May 25th, 2020. I released the first episode, and here's what you didn't see, like the behind the scenes of me releasing my first episodes. Like, I didn't tell anybody about this, and I just like kind of lived with this, but now I'm gonna tell everybody. I kept this a secret from everyone. I didn't want anybody to know, besides Gadir, who did my artwork, who is my cousin. She's the only one who knew about the podcast. I did not tell anybody else. I do that with a lot of my projects that I work on because I don't know, it's always just been something I do. Like, I like to perfect my things in private, and I don't really want to bring it to the world until, or like even my mom or my sisters, until I know this is what, like, I'm proud of what it is and everything like that. So I kept it a secret from everybody. I recorded probably 5 times before I put out the episode, The Men I've Dated. 5 different episodes before I put out The Men I've Dated, and I probably wrote 5 different episodes as well. And it was I came with a fucking banger. Like, The Men I've Dated, if you haven't listened to it, I come on here and I shit on every single man I've ever dated, but I also stand by every single thing I said in that episode. Like, it's all facts. But that was a lot of anxiety and fear leading up to that, which is like so crazy for me to be like, I was really anxious and fearful, but it's like I came out here being like, oh, fuck these men, I'm gonna drag them. Anyways, I couldn't sleep for like a week before my launch party. I did have a launch party. I didn't post much about it because it was during something was happening where I was like, I don't really want to post much about it because I feel like there was bigger issues in the world, and I was like, here I am with a podcast, and everyone's like, Libby, there's a lot happening. But I obviously launched the podcast, and then I had a little launch party, and then I was so nervous. The original episode I was going to put out was called, I was talking about confidence, and it was so bad. I re-recorded the confident episode since then, but it was so rough. I remember I sent Maisie, my best friend, you guys know her, the episodes before I posted them, and I sent her The Men I've Dated and confidence, but I sent her confidence first, and she was like, yeah, I mean, it's good. And I know my best friend, she was like, yeah, like it's all right, like it's good. She was basically telling me it fucking sucked, and I was like, okay, like I'm just like really nervous. And then I recorded The Men I've Dated and just went crazy. I don't know, like, and I mean, that's like the tone the podcast has carried the whole way through, which is me. Like, I was just 100% authentically myself in that episode, like I've been in all these episodes. And so it felt so good to be like, everyone after I sent them The Men I've Dated was like, no, you need to upload this one. Like, literally throw away that confidence episode. It was genuinely terrible. I was like, hi guys, like, if you want to be confident, you should like do this. I sounded like a fucking squirrel. Like, it was just not a good episode. Anyways, I dedicated this podcast to my mom. She probably hates that I did that now, but in the moment it was so cute. I don't think she thought I'd be talking about blowjob sex and like fuck all these poor men. Like, I didn't think my mom thought I was gonna be doing that, but I wrote her a note the day of the launch party, and I was like, this podcast is dedicated to you. All the success it brings in, everything that happens with the podcast, know that I do this all for you, and I've dedicated this entire podcast to you. Like, this work isn't just for me, it's for you too. Because whether you believe it or not, I'm a sensitive ass fucking bitch and I have emotions. And my mom is probably like the one person in the world, it's like my mom Maisie and my sister Laura, that make me like soft and emotional and like make me feel something for a person and a human being. Like, I can never be like a cold cunt to them. Like, I just love them more than anything in the world. And so like my mom, especially my mom, just like brings out this like emotional side to me. So I was like, I want to dedicate this podcast to her. So that is the past of Midday Matcha. The present of Midday Matcha, what it's done to my life, everything about that is Midday Matcha is obviously my baby. I have fully put my heart and soul into this episode. Into this podcast. I love this podcast. There's been times where I'm like, I absolutely fucking hate this. I don't want to do this right now. But I was just going through other things in my life. I didn't hate the podcast. Like, it's hard to record weekly when stuff's going on behind the scenes, and that's when I was like, you know what, fuck it, stuff doesn't have to go on behind the scenes anymore. I'm just gonna bring this to light on Midday Matcha, and like that's why I share everything that I share. I would say I probably share 70% of my life. Like, I share a lot with you guys, but probably only 70%. I don't like to share in the moment when I'm dating somebody or anything like that, because it's been a weird thing with men, I feel like, that I've talked to, dated, or whatever, that are like, am I gonna be on the podcast? And I was like, no, honest to God, probably fucking not. Unless you cause me some sort of trauma, you're not gonna be on the podcast. And you also like don't wanna really be on the podcast. Like, the men I talk about on the podcast who were in my life, I fucking destroy them like I literally go in on them, because that's how I feel. If you've made it on my podcast, you're not a good person, and that's just about it. And like, you're just a fucking piece of shit. Like, I don't really talk about the good guys on my podcast that have came into my life, just because there hasn't been many. There just really hasn't been many. I am so proud of this podcast. I was not expecting it to be as successful and be as amazing as it is. I'm totally not expecting to be so successful and amazing. No, but when you started, I remember starting it and being like, what the fuck is 1 year from right now gonna look like? And my life has genuinely changed drastically. So many ways, we're gonna get into it. But this is me. What you get every week is truly me. I don't think I could be any more myself. I've brought on some of the closest people to me. You've met my friends and family. Like, you get every part of me. And what I say, that's just who I am. I wish I could be like, it's just a character I made up, but it's like, no, it is me. So I've definitely became the best version of myself through this podcast. I've gained so much confidence and strength and just self-love, self-admiration. There's really something to be said when you're your own boss and you work so hard for yourself. Like, nobody's giving me deadlines, no one's making me do anything, and that's really nice. But like, not being your own boss, and like, so that means everything's in my control. That means monetization, every single thing is in my power, and like, that's a little stressful too. But it's just, when you have something that means so much to you and you get to work on it and do it weekly, like, there is genuinely no better feeling. And it's, of course I feel so strong and empowered. Like, I come on and I talk to thousands and thousands of people each week, and which, ew, that feels so weird saying. I don't like that. I don't like thinking about that. Anyways, but it gives me it gives me obviously a voice. Like, I just have a voice, and I think that's what it does, is like, it makes me feel so empowered. It makes me feel like such a bad bitch when all of you especially are like, your podcast has like really impacted me, changed me, made me feel this kind of way. Like, it makes me feel 20 times better to know that what I'm doing is influencing other people in a positive way as well. So I've also lost friends because of this podcast, and people I've dated and talked to, and like, a lot of my life has genuinely drastically changed since I've started this podcast. But I'm not sad about that. You know, if anything, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I know that's crazy to be like, losing friends and like people I've talked to and stuff like that, that's like the best thing that's ever happened to me. But it is, like, anybody who's fallen off my path in this time of making Midday Matcha was just not meant to be on the road of my life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just not meant to be in my life. And I'm fine with that. I am a little bit of a cold-hearted bitch, but like, that's just kind of, I don't actually feel like I'm a cold-hearted bitch. I'm like, I just don't see the like need for certain negative and toxic people in my life, and I feel like I've definitely preached that to you guys too, and that's has been so important to me this year of like not having negative and toxic people near me and around me, because that affects me, but it also affects my work. Like, it affects the podcast, it affects every single thing I do. If I have negative and toxic people around me, it affects genuinely everything, and I don't want to put that out for all of you. Like, I don't want to come here and be like, listen to my fucking problems. Even if I do that, I'm like, honest to God, sorry, I like truly don't think I do, but I don't want to bring negative and toxic people around me, because I know I have to deliver weekly for everybody else and be the best version of myself every week, and that means cutting out people who don't make me feel good, and that's just about that. So I've definitely like lost people along the way of this podcast, but I don't look at it as a loss whatsoever. I look at it more of like the right people are now in my life because I've taken the time to cut out the bad and the negative. So I just feel like a boss ass bitch because of this podcast. I really do. And I genuinely can't stress enough how much I love doing it. Like, once a topic idea sparks in my head, usually Sundays is when a topic idea sparks in my head, and I sparked in my heads, bitch, it's head. I have one head. And I write it out, and then like Monday or Tuesday I record it. And there's genuinely nothing more than I love than doing this. Like, I really do. And then posting it, seeing everyone's responses, I truly love this. You're like, okay, we get it. We understand. You're fucking obsessed with the podcast, Libby, we get it. Tell us about dick you're sucking. Anyways, I'm really not sucking any dick currently. Depends. Anyways, let's get into the future of Midday Matcha. After I post this episode, so you guys are listening to it, I'm taking 2 weeks off just so I can breathe and get my life together for a minute. I mean, I've really given myself no breaks during this year of genuine time off, which is like fine. I know I'll probably watch me like not even take the full 2 weeks off, but I want to sit down and I want to just I just want to relax. Like, I just really want to take some time to relax and not worry about getting the episode out and writing it. Is it good enough? All those things, re-recordings, anything like that. I just want a moment to really just sit back and look at what I've done and actually just be proud of myself and just take a little 2 weeks off creatively, energetically, just to take a little bit of a break. I might go on a little trip, I'm not sure yet. I get vaccinated tomorrow, which I'm excited about. But yes, I'm just getting my life together. The next part of the future of Midday Matcha is, I've wanted to talk about this and I don't know how to say this correctly in the best way, but I'm fully aware of the things I've said. And I'm also fully aware things don't also age well. So in 10 plus years, people will probably talk about the things I've said on this podcast, and it could potentially like genuinely ruin my career, honest to God. I don't know, but this stuff always happens to comedians. Like, I am not, yes, I'm a person, but I'm also a trained comedian who's trained in saying the things that most people don't want to say, making the jokes that most people like, not like, making jokes that like, I'm not just like an average ass bitch who comes on here and is like da 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 da. Like, no, I am a trained comedian and this is my art and this is my work. This is sounding so bizarre, but I can totally see things I've said on and I don't know what specific, I don't have anything specifically in my mind, but the times are changing so much, and like, I promise to change with the times, but things I've said now I know can haunt me in 10 years and like be looked at as really negative just because of how times change, you know? And I'm not gonna take back anything I said back here or in this time or anything like that, because I stand by everything I said, but I also stand by changing with the times, you know? I stand by evolving, changing, educating, and becoming the best version of myself as the world changes, you know, like as we transition from like, I feel like 5-6 years ago we weren't using pronouns and stuff like that, but now we use pronouns and anything like that. I'm always and 100% willing and committed to change with the times. I'm not like one of those weird Republicans who doesn't. Like that could probably get me in trouble in a couple years. But yeah, like that's weird to say, to be like, I know this is gonna get me in trouble in the future. I don't know it's going to, but I know it could potentially, just because every single person in my life is like, watch what you say, you should be careful, like you could get in a lot of trouble in 10 years. And I don't want to live a life like that, being scared of every single thing I'm saying is eventually going to get me in trouble. I stand by what I say, but I also stand by changing and evolving. I'm only 21 years old, and I know I'm going to change and I'm going to evolve with the time, as well as everybody should and as everybody does. But for the moment, I do stand by everything I've said, and I probably will in the future. It might not age well, but who fucking knows? I get a lot of questions about guests. I don't like having them. If you haven't noticed, I don't like having guests because it's such a meaningful podcast to me. It's such a meaningful time of my week that I get to myself. And I like having very close friends and family on. I don't like having strangers on. So for the future, I will tell you there probably won't be many guests unless it's my mom and Maisie. But like, it's also really hard to train someone to do a podcast. Like, if you've listened to Maisie and I's episodes, you don't see the behind the scenes of me being like, Maisie, shut the fuck up for 5 minutes. Like, you're not letting me speak, like the touch and go of it. But for right now, I'm pretty content with it just being me. I have thought about bringing on my ex flingy flings sometimes, but I really only trust people who, like, I know really well, and that's why you've seen Maisie and my mom and Gadira on. I don't really like just bring on any fucking friend I have. Also, like, for monetization purposes as well, I don't bring on guests very much because I don't, there's a whole long legal thing behind that I don't want to get into. But yeah, I like having on, I love bringing on Maisie when I can think of a topic that we both have dealt with. And I love how she talks about things and can articulate things and has such an amazing point of view on things. That's why I love bringing Maisie on, as well as our conversation and our banter together is really well. I love bringing on my mom when I'm trying to tell a story. Like, I brought on Gadira and my mom for really big and major stories I was telling in my life, so I could have someone help me tell that story that was there with me that entire time. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. So that was like Gadira with my eating disorder episode, which is probably still a favorite to me, and my mom with my mental illnesses for me when I talk all about my suicide attempts. Ooh, fun and risky. Anyways, I will still give you weekly episodes. Yes, that's the plan, is to give you weekly episodes. I know a lot of things are changing in my life currently, but Midday Matcha is still number one and a half, and like, it's number one, but other things are coming into place and things are happening where it might fall back a little bit. But for the time being, I still promise to give you weekly episodes. I'm just not going to be as psychotic on myself as I was before, where I was like, if you don't put out 50 episodes in a year, you're a fucking failure. So I'm not gonna be like that, but I am gonna, the only way you won't see a podcast episode from me is if I'm really busy on another thing that I'm doing. That's about it. So yes, also I wanna do more episodes involving your guys' story, such as giving you advice, answering questions, and stuff like that. I'm gonna come up with some segments on my break. I am going to give you guys advice, do a whole advice thing. I'm gonna figure out a segment, what I wanna call it. I've gone back and forth to changing the name of Midday Matcha, but I think I'm just fucking stuck with it, so we're just gonna run with it. But yeah, random little tidbit. I want to do more involving you guys. I want to do more of involving your stories, your personal problems, and reactions and advice. Like, I'm no therapist, but I'm in severe therapy, so I think I could really help. You know, I'm basically a therapist. I'm totally basically like a fucking therapist. Anyways, I'm not going anywhere. Let's just get that straight. I'm a fucking queen. I'm not gonna stop this shit. And I'm not going anywhere, bitches. So I will see you in 2 weeks for season 2 of Midday Matcha with Livy. Wow, what an episode. It makes me feel a lot of things. Mostly just like what a crazy journey the past year has been, and how grateful I am for every single thing that's happened. Like, I don't think I have anything but gratitude in, oh my god, I sound like a fucking hippie, but I really don't think I have anything but gratitude in my heart, and like thankfulness for like the universe, angels, God, whoever the fuck's up there, of everything that's happened and what Midday Matcha has became. Like, this has really surpassed a lot of everything that I thought could happen, but I'm so grateful. So my Midday Matcha memo is, there would be no Midday Matcha without all of you. Okay, so thank you so much for changing my life forever and listening to me weekly. I hope I equally changed your life. I truly do love every single one of you. I know love's a big word, but like, I really do love you. And I'm so grateful. Like, again, I am so grateful. And I'm excited to live life with you every week. I'm excited to keep going. Like, it's been a year, but we're gonna keep going. We're not stopping here. Yeah, 1 year, who gives a fuck? We're gonna keep on going. So that is it for this week's episode of Midday Matcha with Livy. Clearly I am fucking Livy. That means that's it for this year. Wow. This is the last episode I will be putting out. Wait, what? Of my 1 year journey. Like, we're going on to year 2 of the podcast. You guys are like, no, we understood that. We fucking got that. You didn't, bitch. You were the one that needed to take a step back and really deep dive on that one. You're right, I did. Anyways, I love every single one of you. If you want more of me, I'm gonna be posting on Instagram and TikTok during the break of Midday Matcha. It's literally 2 weeks. I'm so dramatic. I'm like, the break. No, but I will be posting on TikTok and Instagram, which are both at She Is Livy. And you can also follow me on YouTube. I will be posting on YouTube as well. I have a video coming out this week on YouTube, which is It's Livy Bitch on YouTube. You know, you can email me at any time at Midday Matcha, 2 A's at the end of matcha@gmail.com. I love you guys, and cheers to 1 year of being the baddest bitches in the game. Oh my god, I love you. Bye. What? YouTube, you already know you're my favorite, but have a good day, or whatever the fuck you're doing.